All right, you should be good now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Tricia Hopkins. I'm the Human Resources Manager for the City of Annapolis, and I provide support to the Civil Service Board. We have a relatively short agenda today in terms of content. We have 3 position descriptions to review. Together, we have a new member. John Egidio is our newest member. We have some business to attend to as the prior chair of this commission, of this board rather, has resigned, which leaves that position open. Under the boards and commissions requirements, that the selection of that chair is from amongst the members. So it's not influenced by me. It's not a requirement that I lead you in any direction. It is really the membership here that will make a selection. So John, are you able to hear us? Okay, very good.
Yes, I can.
Thanks for coming on camera.
No problem.
So the option is yours now, the 3 of you, to make a selection for a chair.
I guess the question becomes, does anyone want the position?
That does become the question, yeah.
And if no one else wants it, I'll gladly take it since I have the time, so. But as a new person, I'll defer to anyone else who might want the position, gladly.
Conversation, reaction? Al or Jennifer? Al, you're muted, and so are you, Jennifer.
John, thrilled to have you. And if you would like it, I would love that.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So I nominate John to be the chairman.
Second that nomination. I'm sorry.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a chair. Thank you, John. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Okay. So we have today with us our harbor master, and there are 2 positions in the harbor master's office, the deputy harbor master and the harbor master. We did a classification and compensation study some years back, and we're working our way through the various divisions and departments in the city. We also have 1 position in planning and zoning, which is the housing affordability specialist. And since that is, Beth, if you're okay with hanging on and letting Sally go forward with the 1 position from planning and zoning, as yours may take longer, I'd appreciate that. Does that work out for you? Beth, you're not muted, I don't think. Okay, I think we'll accept that as an agreement. So Sally, are you okay to review the housing affordability specialist?
Sure.
Okay, very good.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Aye.
Sally Nash, Planning and Zoning. I think I've met Al. I'm not sure if I've met Jennifer or John, but nice to meet you. This position came about basically from there was a lawsuit against the city filed by some residents of HACA, the Housing Authority. And as part of our settlement, we agreed to consider this position. We're calling it a housing affordability position, who will function as our HACA liaison as well as do other functions in the department. And the goal of this position is really just to address a broad assortment of housing issues. We currently have a moderately priced dwelling unit program. This position would help implement that goal, which is more middle income, but it would also help look at low income housing options for people throughout the city and help solve problems that arise as people try to transition from one kind of property to another. So it's a brand new position. We wrote the job description, and it would go in planning and zoning in our division that's called Community and Economic Development Division, and would work closely with our economic development manager and our community development administrator. So are there any questions for me about this position?
Yes, if I might. Hi, this is John. Why is it not exempt?
I will refer that over to Tricia.
Okay,
So this position does not have supervisory authority. They tightened up the FLSA requirements a few years back. You really need to meet three different criteria for professional exemption, executive exemption, or administrative exemption, and it does not meet that criteria.
wow, okay.
Any other questions about the position?
Are there any edits that you would like? I've tried over time, I've learned from our feedback to make adjustments to the various concerns that have risen around KSAs and physical and mental demands. So those have been incorporated already. What language is not here, as I'm looking through here, is I just realized it. Remember, we had added subject to drug testing in accordance with local or federal standards. And we do not have that standard language in here. For this position, just for John's awareness, we have a drug and alcohol testing policy in the city. There are certain positions that are designated primarily in public safety that are in the random pool, and we meet DOT requirements as well, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act standards as well for our CDL licensed drivers. So they're in a random pool. Everybody else after a pre-employment screen is only subject to reasonable suspicion testing. And so we comply with the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Act, which means that we necessarily do that from a safety concern. Any other edits you'd like to make to this? With the one change noted that I will make, does the board wish to adopt this this job description for the city?
I'll make a motion to
Yes.
adopt the job description.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, Sally, I think that's a record.
Okay. Thank you all very
Thanks for-
much.
All right, thanks for your help. So what will happen from this point forward, since this is a brand new position, we are required under the law to adopt the title and the grade in what we call the position summary. That will necessarily have to go forward before the council, for the city council to adopt into the pay plan. They don't have a role in adopting the job description. That's your role. They have a role in, they look at it from a budgetary standpoint, that the position title is accounted for along with the grade assignment in our listing of titles and grades, which we call the position summary. So that's the next action for this particular one. The harbor master is here to discuss the deputy harbor master and the harbor master descriptions. Those titles and grade assignments are already in the position summary and have already been adopted by the council. Like I said before, we went through a classification compensation study with a company called Evergreen Solutions. And what we are attempting to do is we're going through a redrafting, a reformatting of the job description in that style and format. We've done the majority of the descriptions already, as Jennifer and Al well know. They've had several meetings that have done that. The recreation and parks positions have been completed with the exception of the harbor masters division. And so Beth is here today to help answer any questions you might have after your review of the harbor master and the deputy harbor master. So you want to do the harbor master first? Is that all right, Beth?
Yes, is my audio working now?
It is. Thank you.
Good.
Good to hear you. Okay, so the harbor master, Beth, you want to give them an introduction, an overview? That would be helpful.
Sure. So the harbor master essentially is I have a staff of 30 people, which ebbs and flows depending on the season. And I'm responsible to make sure that the city waterways are safe and navigable. And our team collects anywhere between $600,000 to $1 million a year for the city in moorings, fees for moorings and fees for docking. We put on between 8 and 10 special events per year, which means we maintain buoys, we patrol security zones. So I would say that we're everything from an ambassador to it's really like running a small business with light law enforcement on the side. Law enforcement meaning we enforce Title 15 of the city's code. We're not commissioned police officers, but we certainly do a lot of time educating the public about what the rules are in the city, and we do that by way of talks, visits, sometimes written warnings, and sometimes, unfortunately, citations or criminal charges. Do you feel like I covered the general flavor, Tricia?
Well, I just want to ask you a little bit more about what you said in the last about issuing citations and criminal charges. You're not a law enforcement agency. I want to make sure that the board understands that. You are
right. Right. I mean, I think what I want to say is that most of our enforcement of Title 15 is done in the way of education, and so that's why I wanted to emphasize that first. And exactly right. We're not a law enforcement agency. We do have a badge and we do have a mission that includes having to issue written warnings and sometimes citations for folks that don't, for whatever reason, the education route isn't working for them.
right, but those are just violations of city code, correct?
Generally, except in the case of abandoned boats, which is one of our somewhat time-consuming projects. But yeah, but my team doesn't ever write anything other than warnings. The only person that writes tickets is me, and soon the deputy harbor master probably will also write tickets. But when I say tickets, if we write at 10 a year, at the most, generally. So it's, most of it is just saying, hey, you need to slow down, or hey, can you grab your life jacket before you head off on your stand-up paddleboard, those types of things.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make that distinction because in terms of city government, law enforcement is handled by the police department, and obviously for the waterways, that would be Department of Natural Resources, Police, or Coast Guard, correct, Beth?
Right, but also there are times that we need the help from Annapolis Police Department in particular, because if someone's not compliant, APD is the only agency that could be a bit more persuasive with regard to code enforcement, because Natural Resource Police is not going to help with that.
Okay. City code enforcement.
Correct.
Okay. Now, there is one section in here that's highlighted, you might have noted. I don't know if you want to go into that immediately or just go through any review you have of the job description that was provided to you.
Are you talking about the yellow highlighting or the bold?
I'm talking about the blue, which is
Okay.
protect life, property, the environment, and evidence during the early stages of an emergency. When first on the scene at a water-related incident until such time that fire, police, or more highly trained personnel arrive.
Sure, I can talk about that.
Okay.
So when I took this position 5 years ago, the posture of the harbor master's office was that you would never help a person in the water for liability reasons. Obviously, I didn't know this right away, but shortly thereafter, there was a gale force wind and 22 day sailors flipped over all at one time. And I immediately began to understand that because our boats were on patrol every day, all day, in a fairly confined body of water, we were almost always the first boats on scene of an incident. So what I did is I took my team over to the Emergency Operations Center, and we designed a course that teaches basically civilians to respond to something before the police or fire get there. In other words, safely pull someone out of the water. We taught them first aid and CPR. We learned how to administer Narcan because our office sits over top of a public restroom, and we worry that we will have a heroin overdose. So essentially, we are not fire, we are not police, but we are certainly very, very likely to be the first person on the scene of an anaphylactic shock or heart attack or that type of a thing, or boat fire. And I wanted the team to have the skills to at least mitigate and get on channel 16 and call for help, as opposed to just standing there and watching. And we have had a tremendous amount of success, saved quite a few lives, I'm certain of it. And I'm pleased that even though, and I think this has come about because natural resources forces have dwindled. Their manpower is much, much less than it was 10 or 20 years ago. So that's why this piece was added in.
Okay, so I would recommend, Beth, that in conversation here, we make sure that this is about administering basic first aid, right? So we're not expecting staff to be EMTs. We're not expecting staff to have law enforcement powers. We're really just expecting that, like any civilian would do. It sounds like you've elevated it with training, which is very, very helpful, I'm sure. But that we make sure that this is about, and you have the early stages of emergency when first on the scene.
Well, I think too, it's important sometimes to leave, for whatever reason, we have a lot of volunteer firefighters that become interested in our job, and some of them are trained as certified EMTs. And so they are told and taught that you are to respond to the level of your training and not above that. So if I have an EMT and a police officer arrives that is not an EMT, that employee would be expected to do what he's trained to do, or she.
Correct, but that's not because they work for you. That's because of their training.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of left, I think more highly trained personnel, I was hoping would cover it.
Well, regardless, I think we need to include in here about notifying I don't see the notice to police and fire in here.
Sometimes they protect life and property or the environment, and there's absolutely no need to notify the fire or police. So everything is different. Sometimes it's a dinghy banging against $1 million boat. So they may go pull that back and they're protecting property, and they may give that back to the owner, but they never need to notify anyone else. And I would say every situation is different. Sometimes it's a minor fuel spill and they're protecting the environment.
Uh-huh. Okay. Do you need a separate item about notifying police or fire in the event of an emergency?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Do any of
Well-
the board members see changes they'd like to, edits they feel would be appropriate?
Tricia, I'd just like to respond to what you said. If they're the first one on the scene, they should be the person to call for more help. I mean, I think that needs to be in writing, because they should be calling the fire department if it's a fire, or the police or ambulance, or as the first one on the scene. I mean, it may be common sense to someone else, but it probably should be in the job description, I would think.
Mhm.
Am I thinking wrong?
I support that.
I feel like this is being said. I think that we could put the entire lesson for incident response on there if we want to get down into the nitty gritty. But it feels as though I'm not sure where this is coming from.
No, I think it's just that we're trying to, because you have that particular addition of a job duty, that there's also the job duty that logically stems from that about alerting in the event of an emergency, making sure that
But
there's
are we going to go into specifics about where we should put a derelict boat? and whom we should,
I think
and
I'm
whether or
just,
not.
I don't think that's necessary. I think that's something that can be spelled out in your protocols.
Tricia, this is John. Without beating this to death and making it too long, and I think that's what Beth is trying to avoid. I think by adding 2 words to the end of that blued out section, are contacted and arrive.
I guess
Until
what I'm
such
trying
time
to say is there are many instances when fire and police will not be contacted. So if you want to add 4 words at the end, you could say contact appropriate sister agencies when necessary, because many times we protect life, property, or the environment. I would say rarely life, but many times we protect property or the environment, and there's no need to contact fire and police. They are minor incidents that are weekly occurrences.
Well, if they are, then they wouldn't fall under this particular paragraph then, because you automatically would do that. Because this paragraph kind of espouses a theory that someone's going to show up and take over.
Well, and kind of where I was going with that, John, by making it a separate item, it's that when there's an emergency that would lead to a call to police or fire, that it's just a responsibility of, it's not saying all calls are
Mhm.
emergency. It just says, what, you know, when an emergency requires police and fire, that the harbor master is responsible for making sure they're alerted. I mean, this is part of, I'm just trying to get at what would be staff responsibility, and that the harbor master is responsible for making sure that happens in the role of the harbor master.
Right, it's definitely on an as-needed basis, you know.
Again, this is a review by the Civil Service Board, so I'll respond to your desires in this.
Well, I agree that it should be a separate item just when the situation calls for it, because they're the first ones on the scene. And that's probably obvious to the person speaking for the position, but as a newcomer reading the description, I would want to read that they're going to call for, you know, higher authorities when the situation called for it.
So do we want to say context 9? That would be the appropriate way, Beth, context 911. Or
It would
insurance.
it would be all different. So we might call MDE if it's a fuel spill. We might call Natural Resources Police directly in certain circumstances, because 911 would delay. But in most circumstances, it would be 911, but not all circumstances. Many
Okay.
times they are speaking right on channel 16 directly to the Coast Guard. So if I get a call for a swimmer in the water or a drowning person, I'm going to come up on channel 16 directly and say, this is the harbor master. I'm responding to Spa Creek ETA, 5 minutes with a drowning in progress. And so
Okay.
that 911 process has started a different way.
Uh-huh.
Trish, would that be rather than 911, the appropriate agency?
Well, what we could say is something like ensures contact with responding agents, either 911, Coast Guard. I mean, we could name the agencies, occurs in the event of an emergency requiring their services. Okay, I'm going to read this back to you, how this sounds. Ensures contact is made with 911, U.S. Coast Guard, or responsible agencies for emergencies requiring their services.
Sounds okay to me.
Very comprehensive. That should do it.
How does that sound, Beth?
That sounds fine.
Okay, great. Any other changes?
Is this the deputy harbor master or the harbor master?
This is the harbor master.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of similarities between the two. So the only other thing I need to do is change protect to protect. So I'm in the same, so the verbs are conjugated all the same at the start of each of the job tasks. So that will become protects life, property, the environment, and evidence. Everybody good? Okay, so I've made those changes, and how does everybody feel about the adoption of the harbor master job description?
I have a couple of comments.
Okay.
Is the blue the only part that's up for discussion, Tricia?
Oh, no, we can bring up anything that you wanted to visit, Beth.
I have three things that are standing out to me.
Okay.
There's a bullet point a bit above the blue that says administers a large volunteer program for work related to the overall operation of the harbor. I've never done that. I've considered it many times, and I absolutely would never have the time to do this. Never. So I would suggest we consider striking it or making it something that is I can do it, I don't have to do it.
We could do that. Either way. I think that it's not really not necessary to even say large, because it can be whatever size it needs to be. Are there any situations where you have people that assist with events?
I do. They're usually family members or VIPs from the mayor's office, and we have
Okay.
them sign a waiver that the Office of Laws provided for me. And then we loan them a shirt, and they do help during our special events.
So what we could do instead, Beth, I'm just talking out loud, just maybe rewording this, could be overseas volunteers for event support.
Yeah, I like it. I like how you say overseas volunteers. I mean, it would be okay just to say overseas volunteers for work related to operation of the harbor.
Okay.
Because then if, I don't know, if I get another debris, that horrible debris thing that happened, maybe I would have volunteers help with that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't want to remove the possibility of having volunteers for you.
I don't either, but the way it's written is frightening.
Yeah.
And then another thing that comes to mind is I don't really see a job spec that talks about writing to the level that is necessary for my job. So it's really very important to be able to write reports for court, persuasive letters. It's important to be able to do PowerPoints and teach classes. So I feel like that portion of the job function should be included, but I'm not sure I'm prepared today to say what that looks like.
Well, we could make it general, which is
I wouldn't want
prepare.
the person out. Good.
No, go ahead, Beth. What were you going to say?
I wouldn't want the person that comes after me to be without those skills or
Yeah.
abilities.
So you're talking about preparing correspondence and reports.
Yes, but also being able to prepare. I mean, it's very common for the public to reach out and ask me to do a speech or come and teach an entire yacht club about boating safety.
Right.
And
right,
not everybody has that skill or ability.
right. So let's think about where that falls in frequency for you, so that we can find a good spot. I mean, we have in here rights grants proposals, obtaining grants. I'm thinking perhaps close to there. Because that's also writing. Oh, I see something that's redundant. I'm looking for a spot here. We have interviews and selects candidates for new hire. And we also have in here responsible for employment of staff, harbor master division. So that's a bit redundant.
The broader statement's probably better, I think.
The employment of staff.
I think it's, yeah,
Okay. All right. Let me take the other one out.
because that includes interviews and selects candidates.
It does. It does. All right. So I'm going to delete interviews and selects candidates for new hire. And then how about Beth, are you okay with before writing grant proposals, putting in there prepares written correspondence, reports, and prepares and presents training to members of the public?
I'm not sure if you mean a different bullet. I think it's a different bullet point.
Yes.
And to me, it's more like, yeah, develop and present presentations for groups that, educate and inform.
Okay, so presents presentations is probably redundant. So develops and presents
Material,
Lectures.
develops and delivers presentations. Develops and provides presentations
That's good.
to members of the public. I mean, civic groups. Is that what you
What?
tend to do?
sure, that's good. It can be, sometimes it's elementary school students, and sometimes it's a ward in the city, and sometimes it's yacht clubs, those types of groups.
I'll say develops and provides presentations to civic groups, school groups, and others, and other members of the public. Then probably a separate bullet would be composes and responds to inquiries complaints and concerns. Through written correspondence and or reports. How does that sound, Beth? Do you want me to read that again?
Sure.
Composes in response to inquiries, complaints, and concerns through written correspondence and or reports.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, those are good. Another,
And
go ahead.
Another, I mean, I hope I'm not getting too long. Please tell me if I am, but I really feel like something that takes up a fair amount of my time is managing and overseeing maintenance and upkeep of more than 22 street ends. I feel like that needs to be there because it is a perpetual thing that we need to take care of. It might mean like, it might be that I'm using $250,000 worth of grant money to put in a floating pier and dredge, or it might be that we're just putting down new boards or a cone or a sign. But it takes up quite a bit of time to manage and oversee that as well.
So that's not, let's see, I'm trying to figure out.
I'm trying to see if it's already there, and I don't really feel like it
Yeah.
is there.
Whether to expand. I mean, I see patrols harbor and city waterways. Those street ends, are those not part of the patrol, or are they part of the patrol?
They're a little bit of the patrol, but mostly it's like citizen complaints. Like citizen will call and say there's a board missing from this street end, and we have to go out and make sure we have the materials and make sure we put that board in correctly, or that we put a cone up or a warning sign. So if you think it's part of it, then we can leave it out.
Well, you have something that's not fully developed here, which is advises director on conditions. Conditions of what? Would that include? I mean,
the
maybe the
director
beginning of that
wouldn't help.
needs.
I mean, the director wouldn't want to be advised of that. He would want me to take care
Yeah.
of it.
Right. Well, I'm thinking more of some language ahead of that that would include what you're doing with the street ends, and then at the end of it, advising director as needed. But that may be
Yeah, I don't know
narrow.
what that bullet. I don't even know what that bullet means exactly.
Yeah. I think we don't want to miss. I mean, it's.
Can we just add ensures proper maintenance and operations of city dock facility and city street ends? Can we just add that on that second bullet? Does that make it easier?
Yes, and street end. And street end. What do you call it? Street end what?
Street end. Well, I don't want to call them street end parks because some of them aren't technically parks. I would just say city street ends.
Well, only as they end at at a marine. City street ends abutting. This city marine area.
I don't want to be, I want to say only city street ends because I don't want to sound like I'm responsible for someone's private bulkhead.
Yeah, but aren't there some city street ends that don't end up being next to a marine environment or next to the harbor?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't want you
know.
responsible for all of them.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
No,
I didn't think
I see
so.
what you're saying. How do
Yeah.
you think that needs to be worded?
So that's what I'm saying, street ends in harbor area.
That touch city waterways.
Yeah,
something
right.
like that.
There you go. Mm. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to advises the director on conditions. It feels like an incomplete sentence at best.
Maybe you need to take that whole bullet out. If it doesn't make sense to her, maybe you should just delete it.
Yeah, I think we probably need to put in the job summary that she reports to the Director of Recreation and Parks. I mean, one way we could change that is just keeps director apprised of that's when I'm trying to figure a way to talk about elevated issues. Okay, so I'm going to put in the job summary. Position reports to the Director of Recreation and Parks. And maybe that is enough to then take care of that bullet, because reporting to the Director of Recreation and Parks should establish the chain of command and therefore a responsibility to keep supervisor informed at the director level. How do you feel about that, Beth?
That seems fine to me.
Okay. Members of the board, does that sound like a reasonable way to approach that?
Yeah.
Al, I think you're muted. I don't hear you talk. It looks like your lips are moving. Okay. Al, did you have something to say about that? Do you mind
No, I
repeating
think
it?
that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Of course,
Okay, so I have removed the director language. And I've added position reports to the Director of Recreation and Parks in the job summary. Okay. So Beth, there's one other comment that was put in here on develop sufficient techniques for collection of fees and administration of the private mooring waiting list. Did we need to revisit that as well?
I'm looking for that and I don't see that.
So that one is
Oh, I see it. I
on the
see it.
second page. Yeah, okay.
I see it now. My develop sufficient techniques for collection of fees and administration of the private. I think it's fine. That is really important.
Okay,
The only thing that makes
Yeah.
me think of, unfortunately, is that there is one more bullet I feel is needed in here. One of the most important things that has happened since I've come along is this person needs to have a full understanding and help enforce all of the grant encumbrances. So that wasn't done in a way that should have been done in the past.
uh-huh,
And it's really important that if the city signs for $2 million worth of dock work, and there are conditions to that grant, that the harbor master knows those conditions and makes sure that the city follows them.
Do you
So I
want
feel
to
like
go down to Wright's grant proposal obtains and administer grants, and maybe we can embellish that a little bit? Maybe
I think you just need it.
to ensure
just think it's all-
compliance.
Just how about, or just a separate bullet, or right after the semicolon, ensures compliance with, grants, ensures compliance with
With
grants.
grant requirements, how about that?
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm just gonna add it to, and administers grants to ensure compliance with grant requirements. How's that?
good.
Okay.
And I just have a couple of comments about qualifications if everybody feels like we're done with the bullets.
I think so.
I'm not sure how I feel about an associate's degree as being the level of education for this position. I'm open to leaving it at that, but I'm inclined to think it's really more of something that should have at least a bachelor's degree.
I think that's more than reasonable, honestly. And we could still include equivalency language if that's, I mean, I would agree with you, Beth. I feel like the minimum qualifications for this job are pretty low considering all the responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of adding equivalency language because you could find that person that has 20 years in the Coast Guard that didn't get their bachelor's.
Right. Right. And that's kind of dwindling over time, where people are, they've learned on the ground kind of thing and grown up in their career. We're part of an era where higher education was not kind of the norm.
Except I feel like it might be coming back.
Do you?
I feel like it might.
Okay. So let me change this. We don't say what kind of bachelor's degree, though. And we would say an accredited college or university. With coursework. Business or public administration, is that, or related?
I don't know that it matters. I just think in the course of getting your bachelor's degree, you learn the types of computer writing, presentation, public speaking. Like in the course of getting most bachelor's degree, you would get those kinds of skills and experiences. So I don't know if it matters what your degree is in. I would just feel like most successful candidates would have that.
I think it's reasonable to probably say business or public administration or related degree to provide the knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then that way, if somebody's got a degree that's not giving you very much overlap at all, it would not be included.
Except I think that you could have a bachelor's degree in marine biology and be
True.
perfect for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in that you could also have a degree in criminal justice or business management, or I think there's so many degrees that would overlap.
Okay. Is 3 years an appropriate?
Good.
Okay, so I would just put bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university. But is 3 years is not really specified here. And is 3 years really appropriate? I think that supervisory experience isn't accounted for, and for someone to be a harbor master without prior supervisory experience would be pretty tough.
Probably a fail.
Yeah, Yeah. So
I like the term progressive. I think I've read the term progressive supervisory, like you haven't just been a sergeant or you haven't been like a first line manager in a bank. Like I feel like you have to have progressive supervisory experience where I've supervised people, but then I've supervised people that supervise people. But maybe that's too much. I'm not sure.
Well, let's start with this. 3 years of what you could do is 3 years of experience of supervising marine operations or just kind of trying to form this a little better. Three years of experience. Supervising. Waterways. I don't know if this makes sense, Beth. What about 3 years of experience supervising marine operation or waterways management?
I'm not sure.
That may not work.
I'm Googling some phrases. I'm Googling some phrases to see if I can iron it out.
Okay.
Is there such a thing as progressive supervisory experience? Like what she's looking for?
Well,
Is that such a thing?
No, it'd be better to really lay out what level you're looking for.
Okay.
Progressive means that that person is showing that they've done, first line supervision, they progressed to middle management, and so on. I think that would be tougher to hand somebody to interpret the minimum qualifications for.
Okay.
I think it's better to just say what level is going to be satisfactory. And you got to think in career ladder standards here, because what we're creating here is the minimum qualifications. We're not trying to define Beth's replacement, like fully qualified. We're not talking about who you might choose and who you might select from among the candidates. You're talking about what does somebody need to have in order to qualify and be considered for this. If you have, if I'm not saying this is what will happen, but if say you're building your deputy such that at some point the deputy could take over as the harbor master, you don't want to make the minimum qualifications impossible for that
Right.
person to obtain and therefore qualify. So if your deputy harbor master is your first line supervisor, I'm not saying that's how it's set up in the city, but if that's your first line supervisor, and now you've built into the minimum qualifications a higher level of supervision, you've just really
That's a really
impacted
good
their
point.
ability to qualify.
That's
Yeah.
a really good point.
Yeah.
But so I think you're right. We leave it broader. That's why Tricia knows this stuff. But I do think we want to be careful about narrowing down the type of supervision the person has done, because I think that I've often thought that a person that has experience in like hotel, restaurant, or resort management would be very good at this job, and they may not have experience with managing waterways. I think there are other management skill sets that could translate to this industry.
But then, Beth, there's a lot that somebody would obviously need to have experience around
I know, but
dealing with the boating population. So
yeah, I mean, I think we need to cover that they have the waterway experience and knowledge. But I don't know
we
if
could.
they have to have it.
So Beth, how about this? We could separate the supervisory experience from the marine operations experience.
I like that. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because maybe I've spent so much time on the water that I know all of that, but maybe I've only ever managed people in a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen situations in reviewing resumes and applications where you require the supervisory experience and that person did not get that experience in the profession that they've applied for. They got it elsewhere and they could be pretty convincing in relating what kind of supervisory talent they gained in other situations and apply it to the job that you have before you. So why don't we change this? Again, let's concentrate on the 3 years. Is 3 years enough time for somebody to have experience in marine operations or waterways management? And then we can add supervisory experience and possesses supervisory experience.
I have a
2
thought,
years.
but I would like to hear from one of the panelists, I feel like.
Okay. John, I think you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay.
There you go.
I think we're making not a mistake, but I think we're looking at this as something quantitative that's going to get you a job. And it's all it really is something that's going to kind of winnow down resumes. And I think we're putting too much meat into something that's basically just do send your resume or don't send your resume. You're really going to decide who gets the job based on their overall experience, what they've done, not whether they got 3 years or 5 years. Maybe somebody walks in the door with 20 years, or somebody walks in with 2 years that's drop dead and you're going to hire them. But I think this isn't really how you do the job. It's more, this is what you need to apply for the job.
Correct. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think we're spending an awful lot of time under what you need to apply for the job.
Well, it's an important distinction because in a government environment, we need to make sure that we have a minimum established so that individuals that don't have credentials for consideration aren't given an expectation of success or ability to hold a job if that's not going to work.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. We have a promotional process in the city of Annapolis, and there's an expectation too that individuals that work for the city get first consideration. So we want to make sure that it's obtainable, and it would not be setting somebody up for failure by not having some credentials expected.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Level. Yeah.
Got it.
And we don't want to build a hurdle that's impossible to jump over either. I mean, so there's a kind of a balance between the two that we're trying to work out here.
I feel like I'm leaning towards 5 years, but I don't feel that strongly about it.
So what about 5 years of experience in marine operations, and 2 years of supervisory experience? This is a grade 18 position. We have 20 grades in our system. So this is a high level position.
I honestly feel like the supervisory time is just as important as the marine time.
So you want to have 5 years of supervision?
I think so. It takes a long time to learn how to manage people.
Yeah.
I was going to say, of the two, I would think the marine operations easier to learn on the job than it is the supervisory part.
Yeah.
So with 5 years in marine operations, to be that specific, you may scare away people. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's not about scaring away somebody. It's making sure somebody can obtain the job and do it without failure. So current reading, I'll just read it back to everybody. Current reading is bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university and 5 years of related marine operations experience and 5 years of supervisory experience.
Sounds good to me. This is John again.
Does that read well to everybody?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Hey, Beth, are you good with that?
I think that's good. I know it seems like a big jump, but I think we were pretty far down there.
Okay, the only other thing I have not done is put the equivalency language in here. Do you want the equivalency language in here?
I think yes, because it helps the next people that hire have flexibility, but keeps them focused on what they probably should get.
Okay, so what I'll add is, and I have to double check this language, so I have to say that sometimes I flip into my county experience because I worked for Anne Arundel County for a long time. So, but I'll get the right language here. And so, I'm going to say, or an equivalent combination of acceptable education and experience. Or whatever is our language that we use. So I'll make sure that I pick up that language. Okay. I think that's the language. That sound good?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes,
All right. I think we made it through Harbor Master. Are you comfortable, Beth?
Yeah, I think we've made some improvements. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good. All right, let me just save this. Okay. All right, so now Deputy Harbor Master. Yeah, me too. All right, so for
I have a
Deputy,
preliminary question
Go
for
ahead.
Tricia.
yeah,
Because we're looking at a third civil service position, which I assume we're not talking about today,
right.
I'm struggling with the idea of working on this right now because I think some of the essential job functions will be pushed over to this third position. So I'm a little stuck.
Well, one thing we could do is we could go forward with this today and revisit it when you get to the creation of the civil service job for the watch. Is it the watch commander?
Correct.
Yeah. It might be better to at least have a description that gets the two positions in sync with one another, the deputy and the harbor master. And then
Okay.
come back and make that adjustment. Can always
Okay.
revisit it. That's not a problem. Because again, the work of a job description review for civil services is totally in the hands of the Civil Service Board. We don't have to go back to the city council in any regard, unless we're changing a title or a grade assignment. You don't intend to change the title on this, do you?
Deputy?
Right.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So we should be in good shape there. All right. Do you want me to make similar changes that we made to the harbor master around the protect life and property? Go back to that.
Sure.
Okay, so what that would do is we would leave that one intact, and we would include ensures contact is made with 911, U.S. Coast Guard, or responsible agencies for emergencies requiring their services.
I have one more preliminary question.
Mhm.
I'm not sure where all the strikeouts are coming from. Is it because we reworded them, or we're really taking away duties, if you know?
Most of the strikeouts that are in there were done by the consultant to previous versions. Let's see if I can do a full markup. Okay, so if you do an all markup on your view of that Word document, you can see who added what and what was done.
I'll try.
So if you go
What's
to
the
review,
general?
go to review. And under review, there's next to track changes, there's a drop-down box.
Show
And
markup.
go to all markup. You see everything. And you can see a lot of them are my format changes. We've got some additions in here by Tyler. You've got where I changed the job summary. You can see what I deleted, what I added.
I think on first glance, it looks like, I'll just tell you that our operation, just for the edification of the board, our operation for much of the year is the 7-day-a-week operation from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. or longer. So we're open almost 100 hours a week. And Tyler and I are both charged with working at least 35 hours a week. So the title deputy is a good name because it means that when I'm not there, he does a lot of my job. When I am there, he does a lot of my job because there are so many parts to the job, and the job is it's very different. It's not like just running a small business. It's not like just managing a waterway. It's a lot of things all mixed together. So I think we want to be careful with taking too much out, even though it is, I guess, for lack of a better term, Tricia could help me here. It is certainly a lower skilled, or you need fewer knowledge, skills, and abilities. We want to be careful about striking too much stuff out, though, I think.
Yeah, I would suggest, Beth, that what you would put in the job duties is what are the regular assignment responsibilities, and that if some of those responsibilities that have been added are really just in your absence performing them, that's really not necessary to describe, because that's acting in the absence of the harbor master would be the way to capture that.
I hear what you're saying, but really, there's no way one person could do it. Even when I am present, he's doing a lot of my job duties because it's so much water and
Right.
so many responsibilities. So he might be handling a derelict boat even when I'm working, because maybe I'm waiting,
So-
training staff or whatever.
Right, but so some of the distinction that you would make at the two different levels is that you're responsible for overall policy, setting the direction, establishing the training. I mean, maybe Tyler's tasked with developing training, but you're going to be the one that approves it and is going to be responsible for how it's delivered, the ultimate authority. It's not that you can't assign responsibilities that are ultimately yours, but the distinction is really more about who does the buck stop with, you know, who's the one that is responsible for the outcomes. And
If I tell you some specifics, so we'll get exactly on the same page.
okay, go
So if
ahead.
I'm looking at the very first strikeout that I see that's underlined in red, but that might be the version that I'm looking at, the one that says provides responsible and complex assistance to the mayor's office, that definitely should be, that's definitely a good strikeout. That shouldn't be there.
Let's see where you're looking.
So I'm on page 2, and I'm about halfway down the page. And there's no bullet next to this one. It's just a strikeout. Provides responsible and complex assistance. I definitely think that's a good strikeout.
Why am I not finding that?
That's not on the, I don't have that one on mine either.
No.
Is it because I put all markup?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me change my
So
version then.
if it's showing as a strikeout, it's not there.
All right, I apologize then.
Yeah.
I guess I'll change it to simple markup so I don't confuse anyone.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm lost now. I have to go back. And I apologize again. Is everyone looking at something with no strikeouts at all now?
Well, I'm looking at simple markup, but it can be no markup was fine as well. Simple markup doesn't do anything other than show you red lines next to the sections that have had changes in them. So either one of those will work. No markup or simple markup will work.
Okay.
Okay, so does that help you?
Unfortunately, I think there are some things that were deleted that might have to come back in.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how to go over that if we don't want to look at all markup.
All right, why don't we give you a moment to look at them? Why
Okay.
don't you do an all markup? You take a look at what was deleted and then let me know which of those we should be
Okay.
discussing. That's probably the best way to do that.
It looks like the patrol duties that were taken out of here that are specific probably need to come back in. So for example, I'm sorry, I'm switching back and forth between you two to make sure I know what you're looking at. There are some broad statements that used to be in here, like Investigates infractions of waterway laws and regulations. Patrols harbor and city waterways to ensure safe, lawful circumstances.
Okay,
Oversees
so
maintenance
they're
activities.
deleted. Those are deleted from, let's see. I think it was location because the patrolling. Those actually should have gone towards the front.
So are they somewhere else and I missed them?
I'm just checking. Hold on. Should have been. Is that not? Honestly, what it should go is under supervises or operates patrol boats. Should probably include in there to patrol waterways and to collect daily fees for public mooring use. Patrols harbor and city waterways. Okay, so it should be. Let's see if I can get this. All right, I'm going to reject this deletion. And then I'm going to put that further up. All right, so I don't know why the essential functions lead off with organizes and controls a current mooring list. Let's start with patrol.
I think that's a good point.
All right. All right, so I've put back in here patrols harbor and waterways to ensure safe. This needs a little bit of work. Patrols harbor and city waterways to ensure safe and lawful use. Of city harbor and services. How does that sound, Beth?
Sure.
Okay. Formatting is pretty much here. And then the other one was investigates infractions.
Yeah, I think you need to add on to that just a little too. He handles not only does he train our staff on how to run boats, but he would handle any citizen complaint of damage done to a citizen's boat by our boat. He would investigate a complaint of an employee. I don't know if I'm getting too specific here. He would be the first person to, sort of investigate anything that our staff did that was less than perfect.
Investigates complaints or
Departmental, I
concerns.
guess complaints or departmental accidents, I guess.
Okay, I think that's enough. Investigates complaints or departmental accidents. And I'll do that as the second one. Okay,
And then I see this bullet, I assume this one's gone, oversees maintenance activities and accounts for revenue and expense related to harbor facility. That's a really big responsibility that he spends a tremendous amount of time doing.
why that's deleted. Is that the third bullet?
I'm looking at the all markup. I'll switch back to simple and see if I can find it. You're saying, is it encompassed by the third bullet?
No, would it be
Inspection.
third position? Would that be the best place?
Oh, probably, yeah, it's a pretty important.
Okay,
Trish,
yes.
would it make more sense for this revision to take place just between the two of you and for us to
Yeah.
come up with another time?
Yeah, I think
Just
so.
because
I think
this-
this is more helping with the format and construction, and that's really not what I was.
And maybe when you come up with something that is more satisfies the description of the position, then you could send that out to us and we could spend this time coming up with our next meeting time or something.
Yes, let's do that. I think that's a great idea, Jennifer. There's another position that's going through some finalization now in the police department. So having a meeting sooner rather than later would be helpful to them as well. So it wouldn't just be for this one.
Okay.
And I'd like to try to, depending on what your schedules are, get that on the calendar sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I know, Jennifer, you've said like once a week is okay for you, but not a whole lot more. It wouldn't
Right.
take a lot of time if we did our job ahead of this, if we had our exchanges a little more meaningfully, and which Beth and I will do before we get back before you. And I'm very close on the police department. They're back and forth on that, so it would not take a lot of effort
Okay.
to present that one as well.
Wednesday mornings work for me. How about John and Alvin?
Yeah, I'd like to stick with Wednesday if I could.
How
Fine.
about you, John?
A Wednesday's fine.
Okay, so calendar wise, that puts us at the 21st. Let me just look at my calendar.
Oh, okay. I apologize. The 21st is bad for me. I have a funeral,
Oh, okay.
but the following one I could do.
Unfortunately, I'm having surgery that day and I'll be out for a couple of weeks. So
Oh, okay.
I'd have to do that before.
Maybe we need to look at other than a Wednesday then.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I hope at most an hour of your time to do 2 descriptions. You can tell there's a big difference when we're ready. And,
Yeah.
have been through our exchanges like Beth and I were doing here.
Well, if it's just an hour, I could do the 21st. Because
we
I could do 8:30 to 9:30 before leaving for the funeral.
Okay. Do we
I
want
was
to aim
think-
for that?
That's good for me.
Okay. All right. And what we'll also try to do, Beth and I, is incorporate, so that the minimum qualifications, all of that kind of discussion is well-rounded and cemented too. so that what we bring back before you'll be, we're both comfortable with. She and I are both comfortable with before coming back to you.
Okay, great. So you'll resend us what you come up with,
Yes,
and then the 21st we'll meet from 8:30 to 9:30.
right. So today I'll consider that we've adopted the harbor master and the housing specialist, housing affordability specialist. So we've
Great.
got, and you've chosen a chair. So good work today.
Great job. Okay, so is that it for us?
That's it. You just need a recommendation for adjournment. And
Okay, I recommend we adjourn.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.